Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, whatever time of day it is for you. We are continuing on with our Logic and Proofs chapter in geometry. And today we're in section 2-2, day 1, and we're going to be talking about conditionals. So what I'd like for you to be able to do today is to know and recognize what conditional statements are and know whether they're true or false and be able to identify their different parts or sections of the phrases. So first of all, let's go ahead and identify what a conditional is. A conditional is an if-then statement. So these can sound all different types of ways. For example, if it's raining, then the sidewalk is wet. Or if I am running, then a ghost is chasing me. So lots of different scenarios can work for this if-then statement kind of formula that we have here. Now the if-then statement can be divided into subparts. The first part is called the hypothesis, and that's the part of the statement that is after the if. So the part following if. Then the conclusion is going to be the part of the statement following then. We're going to do a little bit of practice with identifying that and a little bit later in the notes, but for right now, this is just what you need to know about the definitions. And finally, we have something called a truth value. A truth value is determining whether your conditional is true or false. So it is whether a statement is true or false. So it's the value that your statement takes on. So let's go ahead and look at a couple examples and we can see this stuff in action. Our first example says, write the following conditional in if-then form, then identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. So it says, a giraffe is a mammal. So we need to write this in if-then form. So I'm going to say, if an animal is a giraffe, then it is a mammal. Okay. So we're going to do a little bit of extra with this one, but we'll do everything it asked for. First off, we wrote it in if-then form. We got that taken care of. Then it said identify the hypothesis and the conclusion. So I am going to underline the hypothesis in this kind of darker blue part, or ink. So the hypothesis comes after the if. So it's if an animal is a giraffe. That's the hypothesis. And I'm going to underline the conclusion in yellow highlighter. So the conclusion comes after the end, so it is a mammal. Then we need to, this is the extra part, we're going to determine if this is true or false. So if an animal is a giraffe, then it is a mammal. Is that true? Yes, it is, because all giraffes are mammals. So I'm just going to put a T here and circle it for true. Okay, now when you start doing a lot of statements all together, or if your statement gets long, or sometimes if you're making truth tables in different math classes, we don't want to write out the whole statement. So instead we have symbols or abbreviations. Just like we have a plus sign for plus and an equal sign for equals, we don't write the words out all the time. Instead we just kind of abbreviate it with one letter or one symbol. So here we have P and Q that are going to be our symbols. P equals the hypothesis. Q equals the conclusion. So when we write this out in symbols, if I were to write, if an animal is a giraffe, then it is a mammal. If I were to write that out in symbols, then it would look like this. If P, then Q. And we're able to get it kind of quick and short for us. So it's in alphabetical order for hypothesis and conclusion. It kind of goes in order for what you would think it is. Okay, we're going to identify a few more elements of these conditionals. It says identify the hypothesis and the conclusion for each conditional. So I'm going to underline each hypothesis in this color, and I'm going to underline each conditional, or not each conditional, each conclusion in that color. And our first sentence, or I should say quote, it's a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. It says, if a man hasn't discovered something that he will die for, he isn't fit to live. So this first part is my hypothesis. It's the first section of the conditional. After that, he isn't fit to live is the conclusion. So if he hasn't done the first part, then he isn't fit to live, and that's the conclusion. Next, we have a quote by Lawrence Peters, and they said, if you don't know where you're going, you probably end up somewhere else. So let's identify our hypothesis first. And remember, the hypothesis is the if P part, or the beginning. So if you don't know where you are going, that's the first part of our conditional. The second part is you probably end up somewhere else. So that would be the conclusion part of that statement. We can also have if-then statements that involve mathematical terms. So here it says if 3x minus 5 equals 11, then x equals negative 2. Well, we're still following the same pattern. If 3x minus 5 equals 11, then x equals 2. The last part says, you're an adult if you're at least 21 years of age. This one's a little bit backwards because notice the if part came second, so we need to be mindful of that. So if you're at least 24 or 21 years of age, so that's the if or the hypothesis, then you're an adult. Alrighty, so all we did there was just break it down based off of the beginning of the statement and then leading to the end of the statement. Next it says write each conditional in if-then form. So we're going to take these sentences and make them if-then conditionals. It says a champion is afraid of losing. So I'm going to say, if you are a champion, then you are afraid of losing. We're just rephrasing the sentence a little bit. Number 6 says perpendicular lines form right angles. So if lines are perpendicular, then they form right angles. Number 7 says, every Tuesday, Ray plays tennis. So we can say, if it is Tuesday, then Ray plays tennis. And we have one last sentence, and it says, an angle that measures 40 degrees, I should say degrees right there, 40 degrees is acute. So we can say, if an angle measures 40 degrees, then it is acute. And that was our last example for today's notes. If you have questions, be sure to bring them to me in class tomorrow, and have a good evening.